So today we're going to see what happens when Adam and Eve are forced to leave Eden. And as has been our persistent interest, we'll be focusing on the way in which Adam and Eve understand that once they leave Eden, their perception of the world will necessarily change. Let's just pick it up, Book 11 from 193. Remember where in what essentially is happening here is the sociable angel, Raphael, his place is being taken by the more authoritative angel, Michael, who's not as nice. And they're about to learn, or Adam will, he was put to sleep, Adam will learn about the history of humanity, cosmic history, which for Milton is biblical history. And one of the things we'll watch is the way Adam continually misreads what he sees. Even though he knows the proto-evangelium from book 10, and he should know better, I guess, from some point of view, doctrinally, he should know better, nonetheless, he misinterprets. But let's just pick things up first. 193. O Eve, some further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs and nature shows forerunner of his purpose. So further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows forerunners of his purpose, or to warn us happily to secure our discharge from penalty. We're too happy now, unaware of what's about to happen, because from death relieves some days. How long and what till then our life? Who knows? Or more than this, that we are dust, and thither must return and be no more. That's persistent for Adam. He keeps on thinking that, well, they're going to die and they're going to be reduced to oblivion, to nothingness. Why else this double object in our sight of flight pursued in the air? An eagle chasing two other birds, I think, right? So spake, back on 181, so spake, so wished much humbly, but fate subscribed. Not nature first gave signs, impressed on bird, beast, ere suddenly eclipsed after short blush of more night, or ere the bird of Jove, the eagle, stooped from his airy tour, two birds of gayest plume, peacocks, I guess, before him drove. I'm sure that has all sorts of meanings in relationship to the Iliad, the Odyssey, and Virgil. I thought of the two birds, I just remembered, but they're not obviously peacocks in the Odyssey, when in book 2, the suitors witness these two birds plummeting from the air, not chased by an eagle though. So those are those signs, and Adam says, well, he's making an attempt to read. Why else this double object in our sight, if I pursued in the air and o'er the ground one way the self-same hour? Why in the east darkness ere day's mid-course and morning light more orient in yon wander western cloud that draws o'er the blue firmament a radiant white and slow descends with something heavenly fraught. Something heavenly fraught. So something is not right. And Adam reads in these signs, there is that or there. O Eve, some further change awaits us now, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows forerunners of his purpose. Adam does make them speak, or to warn us haply. So it's either an anticipation or a warning. And then we find out that Adam, in fact, was not mistaken. And let's pick up things at line 315, where Adam laments the departure from Eden. This most afflicts me, that departing hence, as from his face I shall be hid, deprived his blessed countenance. That as is interesting, right? This most afflicts me, that departing hence, as from his face I shall be hid, deprived his blessed countenance. It's strange that even in Eden, well, why not? Why is it not just from his face I shall be hid? It's as from his place I shall be hid. That even the absence of the divine presence is understood in terms of a metaphor simile. as from his face deprived his blessed countenance. And then Adam goes on and talks about what his benefits are in Eden. Here I could frequent with worship place by place, where he vouchsafed, a Bugs Bunny word, condescended to bestow presence divine, and to my sons relate. It's like the Pesach Seder, right? Here I saw God here, I saw God here, I saw God here, and to my sons relate. On this mount he appeared, under this tree stood visible, among these pines his voice I heard. Here with him at this fountain talked. So many grateful altars I would rear of grassy turf and pile up every stone of luster from the brook in memory of monument to ages, and therein offer sweet-smelling gums and fruits and flowers. If only I could stay here, says Adam, I would lift up monuments. Wow, this is in the news today, right? Monuments to famous people are being torn down or threatened to be torn down all over the world. And here Adam in Eden is putting up a monument as testimony to the presence of the divine. Wow. It's weird because Adam imagines that for his children, if he stayed in Eden, they would only know God through the monuments that Adam put there. It does remind you a little bit, reminds me a little bit of the end of Romeo and Juliet, where the Capulet and the other one, they agree to put up a monument for the two lovers, their children, and you know that the monument, or what the monument is meant to stand for, is totally, the monument is totally unable to represent what it stands for. The monuments at the end of Romeo and Juliet clearly fail to represent what they claim to be representing. It's kind of similar, right? How could these monuments, especially for Milton, the iconoclast, how could Adam's monuments do anything? In yonder netherworld, where shall I seek his bright appearances or footstep trace? So Adam not only is lamenting the loss of God's bright appearances, but even his footsteps. Not only is God not present, his kind of semi-presence is not even going to be present. For though I fled him angry, yet recalled to life, prolonged and promised race, I now gladly behold, though but his utmost skirts of glory, and far off his steps adore. I now gladly behold. Like, who writes like this? I'm just pointing this out. It's a strange combination of words. I now gladly behold, though but his utmost skirts of glory, and far off his steps adore. Now in his current state, all he sees, though, that I guess is the consolation, but that's a limitation, his utmost skirts, his farthest skirts of glory. I think we saw that in book 3 as well. And far off his steps adore. But still, Adam is seeing the residue of his presence, the signs of his presence. I guess it's really the signs of his presence. So here Michael is coming to cheer him up. But what kind of cheering up is this? To whom thus Michael, with regard benign, Adam, thou knowest heaven his and all the earth, not this rock only. His omnipresence fills, Milton flirting with pantheism, but just for a very short second. Land, sea, and air, and every kind that lives, fomented by his virtual power and warmed. All the earth he gave to thee to possess and rule. No despicable gift. Surmise not then his presence to these narrow bounds confined. God's not only here, of paradise or Eden. This had been perhaps thy capital state. Tough luck for you. This could have been the capital of the world. This had been perhaps thy capital seat, from whence had spread all generations, and had hither come from all the ends of the earth to celebrate and reverence their great progenitor, a kind of imagined prelapsarian pilgrimage, right? Which Adam is not going to have. But, sorry, this preeminence thou hast lost, brought down to dwell on even ground now with thy sons. You're not going to make monuments which they'll later see. You're going to be on the same ground as them. Yet doubt not, here's the cheering up part, yet doubt not, but in valley and in plain, God is, there's that as again, as here, and will be found alike present, and of his presence many a stein still following thee, still compassing thee round with goodness and paternal love, his face express, and of his steps the track divine. I don't understand that part, but first we see that Michael is telling Adam, good news is that God is going to be here, but it's really as here, which necessitates that Adam and Eve learned how to interpret. As here does not mean here. Here means immediately, although even we see when Adam records what his experience was in Eden up till now, it's not completely immediately. It's still mediated, I think, by that as up there. It's a little bit different here, though. But here, Adam is being taught that when he goes out of the Garden of Eden, he will have to know how to translate from as here to the experience of here, and will be found alike 350 present, and of his presence many a sign, still following thee, still compassing thee around with goodness and paternal love, his face express, and of his steps the track divine. Which, that thou mayest believe and be confirmed, ere thou from hence depart, know I am sent to show thee what shall come in future days to thee and thy offspring. Why does Adam have to learn about time? This is a question I've been wondering about. Why is a God who makes himself present in time so important here? Meaning, in order for Adam to have faith, he's going to have faith. Adam is going to have to understand the future. It makes sense to us, really. The proto-evangelion is about the future. So Adam has to be, it's almost like he has to understand how that proto-evangelion, that assurance that things will work out in the end, however mysterious, what the mysterious terms are then, however mysterious, how that goes along with human history. I was wondering the extent to which the God of space is insufficient, that in Eden there is simply the God who rules over space. The account for the way in which Milton does or does not, I don't remember, deal with the Sabbath. Obviously in the rabbinic tradition, even creation has a very strong temporal aspect. I mean, it does in the Bible, right? 7 days. But here, they're being trained in a future, that a knowledge of a God who's present in space is not enough, because God is no longer going to be present in space in a way that's really discernible. That in order to understand the God who's present in space, I need the God who makes himself present in time. Time is absolutely, it's essential, because space is being, in a way, it's being evacuated. And it's only time which is going to make it meaningful again. I'm reading that strongly now, but I think it makes sense. So Eve's put to sleep, charming, right? And then in line 500, let's pick things up here. I mean, there's a kind of process of accommodations that Adam has to make. And Milton, again, as an epic poet or as a theodicy that comes close to succeeding, takes into account evil in all of its manifestations. Adam sees earlier, I guess, who's dead here? Oh yeah, Cain has just killed Abel. And Michael's going to explain what happened, and that there will be, he'll explain it in such a way that Adam continues to misinterpret. But here, Milton doesn't walk away from giving or presenting death in its strongest poetic representations. Death thou hast seen in this first shape on men, but many shapes of death, and many are the ways that lead to his grim cave. All dismal. Like, make it as bad as possible, Milton. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to. Yet to sense more terrible at the entrance than within. Some, as thou sawest, by violent stroke shall die, by fire, flood, famine, by intemperance more in meats and drink, which on the earth shall bring diseases dire. Go for it, right? Of which a monstrous crew before thee shall appear. That the monstrous crew is of diseases, lo aleno, that thou mayest know what misery the abstinence of Eve shall bring on men. Give it a little bit to Eve there. Immediately a place before his eyes appeared, sad, noisome, smelly, dark, a Lazar house it seemed. What's a Lazar house? Lepers? Where we laid numbers of ill-diseased, all maladies of ghastly spasm or racking torture, qualms of earth-sick agony, all feverous kinds, convulsions, epilepsies, fierce catarrhs, intense and stone, and ulcer, colic, pangs, demonic frenzy, moping melancholy, and moonstruck madness, pining atrophy, marasmus, and wide-wasting pestilence, dropsies and asthmas, and joint-racking rheums. Had enough? Dire was the tossing, deep the groans, despair tended the sick busiest from couch to couch, and over them triumphant death his dart shook. but delayed to strike, though oft invoked with vows as their chief good and final hope. It's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest, but it's not only a psych ward, it's an ICU where everybody's near death. Sight so deformed. So what's Adam going to do? In what heart of rock could long dry eye behold? Adam could not but wept, though not of woman born. That's your Shakespeare reference, Macbeth. Compassion quelled his best of man and gave him up to tears. At space till firmer thoughts restrained excess and scarce recovering words his plain renewed. So then Adam bums out, right? He's complaining even more. Was Adam wrong to cry? I mean, Michael will go on to explain that, well, it's everything. What you see is not everything. You need to know the whole story. But some might suggest, well, or you might suggest from an Orthodox framework that Adam is wrong to cry because he will eventually, by firmer thoughts, he'll pull himself together. But Adam is not meant to start with those firmer thoughts. Milton welcomes those tears. Milton welcomes, as what Virgil calls lacrimae rerum, that the tears of things. He gives space for that. And note also, a space till firmer thoughts restrained excess, meaning this is just excessive. Compassion is part of human life. And Adam cries, "O miserable mankind, to what befall degraded, to what wretched state reserved? Better end here unborn." The theme with Adam, let's end it here. And look and think of it again in narrative terms, that Adam really says, let's just end things now. Let's end the story here. We've been talking about narrative and storytelling throughout, about different characters who have different relationship to narrative. Adam and Eve, who are authors to themselves, yet part of the narrative of God, who is author of all things. Satan, we've noticed, he wants to break out of what he considers the prison house of the narrative of the divine to write his own narrative. So you might say, in doing that, Satan just fails to recognize who he is and where he comes from. People who, to extrapolate from it, people who write their own narratives, irrespective of how do we consider people who write their own narratives irrespective of the world that surrounds them? Well, we either look at them as crazy or they're narcissists, and I think that's what Satan does. He disregards what's around him and where he came from. I'm giving an unsympathetic reading of Satan. Why is life given to be rested to? And so here Adam says, story over, right? Better end here unborn. Story over. Why is life given to be thus wrested from us? Rather, why obtruded on us thus? Who, if we knew what we received, would either not accept life offered, I didn't ask for this, or soon beg to lay it down, glad to be so dismissed in peace. It's interesting, the existential discomfort that Adam feels with life, with the anticipation of death, is so great that he wants to end it here. And here's a question that Adam in a way, through books 11 and 12, is asking questions of theodicy. And his version of it is, seriously, God? This also? Really, God? Right? And here he goes. Can thus the image of God in man created one, so goodly and erect, though faulty sins to such unsightly sufferings be debased under inhuman pains? Why do you do this? You made man in your similitude. Why let him suffer such? How does that make sense? Why should not man, retaining still divine similitude in part, from such deformities be free, and for his maker's sake exempt? Well, that's a good argument. So Adam says it would be much better since man is the image of God, it would be good for you, God, wouldn't it? Had you made us, or he's saying this through Michael, had you made us in such a way that our image of God would be maintained in honor for the sake of your image. So here's Michael not being a kind of, not the sociable angel Raphael. He's being pretty strong here. Is there a place in the classroom for the way Michael talks? Is Michael allowed in the contemporary classroom? No way, right? Trigger warning, Adam and Eve, you're not going to like this. Their maker's, or just Adam here, their maker's image answered not go, then forsook them, when themselves they vilified to serve ungoverned appetite, and took his image whom they served, a brutish vice inductive, mainly to the sin of Eve, Therefore, so abject is their punishment, disfiguring not God's likeness, but their own. Wow. You have your own likeness to live up to, quite apart from the misogyny here. It seems Michael's really, if you want to know how Michael looks at things, well, just Eve's to blame. It can't be bode too well for their relationship. After they leave, disfiguring not God's likeness, but their own, or great Miltonic, or have his likeness by themselves defaced, while they pervert pure nature's healthful rules to loathsome sickness, worthily, since they God's image did not reverence in themselves. I yield it just, said Adam. He admits, and he submits. But is there yet no other way besides these painful passages, how we may come to death and mix with our connatural dust? Well, Michael gives him the example of old age. What we'll look out for, and there are different instances in the history of mankind. Here's Noah's Ark. Here's Noah's Ark. Okay, so I was looking for Noah's Ark, which I found. We're skipping a lot of the history of the world. Noah, by his command, that's God, shall build a wondrous ark as thou beheldest, to save himself and household from the midst of world devoted to universal rack and ruin. So the world is being destroyed, and God, I think, talks to, or Michael says, just going back to my argument about time and place, to teach thee that God attributes to place no sanctity if none be thither brought, by men who were there frequent, were there and dwell, and now what further shall ensue, behold. Fine, so Michael says to Adam that there is really no sanctity of place. Sanctity of place comes through the presence of people who read into that place, who see in that place sanctity, and I think they do that through a knowledge of time. So Adam sees the story as we know it. Let's see. A dove sent forth once, and again to spy green tree or ground wherein his foot may light. The second time returning, in his bill an olive leaf he brings. He's following the Genesis story. Pacific sign. Anon, dry ground appears, and from his ark the ancient sire descends with all his train. Then with uplifted hands and eyes devout, grateful to heaven, over his head beholds a dewy cloud, and in the cloud a bow, conspicuous with three listed colors, gay, betokening peace from God, and covenant new, whereat the heart of God ere so sad, greatly rejoiced, and thus his joy broke forth. So Adam is faced with this other sign, this rainbow. O thou that future things can represent as present heavenly instructor, I revive thee at this last sight, assured that man shall live with all the creatures and their seed preserve. Far less I now lament for one whole world of wicked sons destroyed, than I rejoice for one man, who's that, found so perfect and so just, that God vouchsafest to raise another world from him, and all his anger to forget. I think we'll see that Adam, in some ways, again, is not reading entirely properly. Is God really going to forget all of his anger? But there is, in Adam's own words, well, it's as if Michael is preparing Adam for the one man, not the one man Noah of the Hebrew scriptures, but the one man Jesus. And Adam and we as readers are getting practice now in not only reading the world, but in reading the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, meaning go back and read the Old Testament and you'll realize that that one man, Noah, really is anticipating the one man, Jesus. This is a form of interpretation which goes back to Augustine, typological interpretation, saying, for example, that the sacrificed Isaac is a figure or type of Jesus. The difference between Augustine and Milton is Augustine is an interpreter. Milton tells the story. Milton is, as we've been saying, a midrashist. And when we go back, the Hebraic heathens go back to the Old Testament, or even Christians go back to the Old Testament, they will be able to read that even better. So Adam is getting an instruction in history, and we in the process are getting an instruction in reading the Bible. Adam, as we'll say, we'll continue to see the way he misreads. But Adam does, going back to our question of narrative and the way he thinks about narrative, Adam is now being taught slowly that what you thought might be an ending is not an ending. And I think that can be extrapolated, taken out of Paradise Lost. Adam and Eve are being taught, when you go into the world, what you perceive may be an ending is not an ending. Whether that's the death of individuals, or even whether that's the stopping, the impediment to your plans, to your narrative, to the story that you thought you were telling. That the story you think you're telling, or the story you think you're understanding, even if it seems like it's ending, may function as a beginning. You see the tremendous emphasis on the interpreting person that places. When I look at life, it does not necessarily have to be death. It can be something more. In order for it to be something more, it can't only be the God of space, it has to be the God of time, because the God of time, with the understanding of a future, allows for the possibility that is not only leading to death, not only leading into the material. Satan, who denies that future, well, that's the only interpretation that he has. So Adam, keep on saying Adam and Eve, Adam learns how to interpret, or what it means to interpret after the fall.